My name is Pearl, and I'm 82 years old. I live in a small wooden house at the edge of a quiet town where the mornings smell like rain and the evenings hum with crickets. To anyone who passes by, my life must look peaceful. A lonely old woman with her garden, her rocking chair, and her memories. But what they don't know is that I've lived 50 years haunted by the sound of a name I still whisper before I sleep. Lydia, my daughter. She was just 7 when she died, or at least that's what I've believed for half a century. I remember that day clearer than any other. It was a rainy afternoon in 1974. The storm had rolled in fast, turning the skies black. Lydia had gone to play with her little red umbrella. She loved the rain more than anything. I told her to stay close, but she ran down the road laughing. And then the tires screeched, a scream, and silence. They said it was a hit and run. By the time I reached her, she was lying motionless on the wet road, her small hand still clutching that umbrella. The police said she died instantly. I saw her lifeless face. I'd buried her with my own hands. But something inside me never settled. The coffin had been closed. They told me it was better that way, that I shouldn't see her again. I was too fragile, they said. My husband, Henry, agreed. So I trusted them. I trusted everyone. For years, I visited her grave every Sunday. I talked to her, sang to her, brought her lilies, her favorite flower. Henry passed away 20 years later, and I buried him beside her. I thought I'd soon follow, but I didn't. Instead, I grew old. And then, one evening last winter, someone knocked on my door. It was late, around 9 p.m. The wind outside was fierce, carrying bits of snow. I wasn't expecting anyone. Hardly anyone visited anymore. I shuffled to the door, my hands trembling, clutching my shawl tighter. When I opened it, I froze. There stood a woman, drenched from the snow, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes a shade of green I'd seen only once in my life, the same color as Lydia's. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice shaking. She looked at me for a long time before whispering, "I think you can, ma'am." Her voice, soft, trembling, made my chest tighten. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a faded photograph. She said, "I've been looking for you for a very long time." I took the photo from her hand, and the world seemed to spin. It was me standing by the old fence with a little girl in pigtails, Lydia. The woman took a deep breath and she said, "My name is Lydia." The room tilted, my knees gave way, and I grabbed the doorframe for support. That's not possible," I whispered. "My daughter's been gone 50 years. Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how or why, but I think I'm her." I could barely stand. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give out right there. The woman, this stranger claiming to be my daughter, stood dripping on my doorstep, trembling, her eyes searching mine as if she were afraid I'd slam the door shut. For a moment I wanted to. It felt like a cruel trick, the kind of nightmare that visits lonely old women who dream too much about the past. But something in her eyes, it stopped me. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said softly. She hesitated, then nodded and stepped through the doorway. The warmth of the fire brushed her cheeks, and she closed the door behind her. I motioned for her to sit. She sat slowly, her gaze darting around the room like she recognized it. The old family photos, the worn floral curtains, the ticking of the clock Henry had fixed 100 times. "I don't know how to begin," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Then start at the beginning," I replied. She swallowed hard. "I don't remember much of my early childhood, just flashes. A little house, a woman singing by the window, the smell of rain. Then I woke up in a hospital. They told me I'd been found unconscious after a storm, that my family had died in a car crash. I froze. A storm? Yes, she nodded. They said my name was Lydia, but no one came for me. A couple adopted me and moved away. I grew up in another town with a different last name. I didn't question it much until I got older and started having dreams. About you. My hands trembled. What kind of dreams? Your face, she said softly. Always your face. The way you used to braid my hair. The way you said my name. Tears blurred my eyes. I could almost feel her small head in my lap again, the brush gliding through her hair as she hummed softly to herself. I thought I was going crazy, she continued. Then last year, when my adoptive mother died, I found this photograph in her jewelry box. She pointed to the faded picture on the table, the one of me and little Lydia by the fence. There was a note on the back, she said. Find her if you can. Her name is Pearl. My breath caught. You mean she knew? I think she did. Maybe she wanted to protect me, maybe she didn't know the whole truth. But when I looked up your name, I found this address. I sat there, unable to speak. 50 years of grief, confusion, and loneliness swirled inside me until all I could do was whisper, You died, Lydia. I buried you. She looked down, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then someone buried the wrong child. Her words hit me like thunder. Wrong child? I repeated. She nodded. The hospital records from that night, they were incomplete. No body was ever officially identified. I think someone switched us. The room spun. My mind tried to make sense of it. The closed coffin, Henry's insistent sites that I shouldn't look, the rushed funeral. Henry. My husband had handled everything after the accident. I was too broken to think straight. Could he have known something? Could he have hidden it? I don't understand, I whispered. Why would anyone do that? I don't know, she said softly, but I found something else. She reached into her coat pocket again and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I found this in my adoptive father's journal. I unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was shaky, but one line stood out clearly. We were paid to take her, told to keep quiet. Her name was Lydia. The room fell silent. The only sound was the ticking clock, loud and cruel. I paid, I murmured. By who? I think, she said softly, it was someone close to you. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. I clutched the letter to my chest, my breath ragged. Someone had stolen my daughter. And for 50 years, I had lived a lie. I looked up at her, this woman who might be my Lydia, and whispered, Then we're going to find out who did this. She nodded, her hand reaching for mine. Together. The next few days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and trembling hands. I couldn't eat, couldn't think clearly. Every corner of the house whispered with memories of the past, of laughter, of lullabies, of the little girl who once danced barefoot on the porch. And now, that same little girl, all grown and trembling with fear, sat across from me at the kitchen table, holding a truth neither of us was ready to face. We spread out the clues on the table like pieces of a broken puzzle. The photograph, the letter from her adoptive father's journal, and an old hospital record she had managed to find. The paper was faded, to ink smudged, but one detail caught my eye, admitted without identification. How could that be? I whispered. You had your name, your bracelet, everything. Lydia looked at me. You said the accident happened during a storm. Maybe they were confused. Maybe someone mixed up the records. Or maybe, I said slowly, someone wanted it that way. The thought terrified me. I had spent my life mourning her. The idea that someone had deliberately taken her from me made my stomach turn. There was one name that kept circling in my mind, no matter how much I'd tried to ignore it. Henry, my husband. He had been the one to arrange the funeral, the one who told me not to see the body, the one who insisted it was too painful for me. I remembered his words, his calmness, too calm for a man who had just lost his child. He had always been secretive about money, about his work. Back then, I didn't question it. I trusted him with everything. "Lydia," I said finally, "there's something I need to show you." I led her to the attic. Dust floated in the beams of light cutting through the small window. Old trunks, boxes, and faded photographs filled the space. I knelt beside one box marked with Henry's handwriting, "Personal, do not touch." I hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside were papers, business contracts, letters, and one small envelope with the familiar hospital logo. My heart pounded as I pulled it open. Inside was a birth certificate, Lydia's. But something was wrong. Her last name wasn't ours. "Lydia Carter," I read aloud. "That's not our name," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded slowly. "No, it's not." Behind the certificate was another paper, a receipt, dated just days after the accident. A large sum of money had been withdrawn from Henry's account and signed over to someone named Dr. Raymond Carter. Lydia's eyes widened. "That's my adoptive father's name." The world went silent. My hands began to shake. "Henry paid him," I whispered. He paid them to take you." Lydia's face went pale. "But why? Why would he do that?" I wanted to say I didn't know. I wanted to deny it, but deep down, I remembered the arguments Henry and I had before that night, about money, about debts, about a man he owed. I remembered him shouting at me, "You don't understand, Pearl. I'm doing this for all of us." At the time, I thought he meant taking extra work or selling something. Never this. "He was in trouble," I said, my voice breaking. "He must have owed someone money. Maybe they demanded something unthinkable. Maybe he thought he could fix it by giving you." Lydia covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He sold me?" I felt like my heart had shattered into glass. "No," I whispered. "He didn't sell you. He was desperate, stupid, broken, but not heartless." She looked away, silent. We sat there, surrounded by old dust and broken memories. For a long while, neither of us spoke. Then Lydia said softly, "He died never telling you the truth?" I nodded. "He died carrying it. I buried him thinking he was an honest man." Lydia took a deep breath. "Maybe he did it to protect you." "Protect me?" I asked, my voice cracking. She nodded. "If the people he owed were dangerous, maybe they threatened to hurt you. Maybe he thought giving me up was the only way to keep you alive." The idea tore me apart, but somehow it made sense. Downstairs, the clock chimed softly. The house felt smaller, heavier. The ghosts of what-ifs filled the air. Finally, Lydia reached across the table and took my hand. She whispered, "We can't change what he did, but we can understand it. We can forgive him." Tears rolled down my face. "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you can," she said gently. "Because you already forgave life for taking me. Now you just have to forgive it for bringing me back." I stared at her for a long time, my heart breaking and mending at once. Maybe Henry had sinned beyond forgiveness,
Maybe he hadn't. But what mattered was this. My daughter was alive, flesh and blood, sitting beside me, holding my hand. The truth had nearly destroyed us, but it had also brought us together. And for the first time in 50 years, I felt like the world was giving me something back.
The days that followed were like living inside a dream I didn't want to end. Every morning, I woke up and still couldn't quite believe it. Lydia was here. My daughter, the child I'd buried in my heart for 50 years, sitting at my table drinking tea, humming softly while she stirred sugar into her cup. Sometimes I'd watch her quietly, afraid that if I blinked, she'd vanish again. But she never did. She was real, older, weathered by time and loss, yet unmistakably mine. We spent hours talking about her life, about the family who had raised her. She told me her adoptive father, Dr. Carter, had been kind in his own way, but distant, haunted by guilt in his later years. He told her once, in a trembling voice, that not all debts are paid with money. It made sense now. He'd carried that secret to his grave. One evening, we sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets as the sun melted behind the hills. Lydia leaned her head against my shoulder, and for the first time in 50 years, I felt complete. "You know," she said softly, "when I first came here, I was afraid. I didn't know what I'd find, or who I really was. But now, I do." I turned to her. "Who are you, sweetheart?" She smiled faintly. "I'm your daughter. Always was." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I prayed for this moment every night, even when I knew it was impossible. "Nothing's impossible," she said, squeezing my hand. "Sometimes life just takes the long road home." We sat in silence, watching the sky fade to indigo. The air smelled of rain and lilac. Somewhere far away, a church bell rang. Then she said, "I want to do something tomorrow." "What's that?" "I want to visit her grave, the one you thought was mine." The next morning, we drove to the old cemetery. The path was lined with wildflowers, and the wind rustled gently through the trees. When we reached the headstone that bore her name, Lydia stopped. The stone was weathered, the letters faint, saying Lydia Harper, 1967 to 1974. She knelt beside it and brushed the dust away. Whoever she was, she took my place. Maybe she never had a mother who mourned her. Maybe now she does. I placed a single lily on the grave, the same kind I'd brought for 50 years. My hands trembled, but my heart felt strangely calm. For all those years, I prayed that God would keep you safe. Maybe he did, just not the way I expected. Lydia nodded, her eyes shining. And maybe he kept you safe too, until I could find you. We stayed there for a long time, two souls bound by loss and love, saying goodbye not just to the child I'd buried, but to the pain that had chained me for half a century. When we finally turned to leave, the sky opened in a soft drizzle. Lydia laughed, that same innocent laugh I'd heard the day she ran into the rain with her little red umbrella. She twirled once, arms outstretched, rain glistening on her face. I stood watching, smiling through tears. It felt as if time itself had circled back, giving me one final chance to see her alive, joyful, free. That night, as we sat by the fire, I whispered a quiet prayer, not of grief, but of gratitude. For years, I had lived in mourning, for a daughter I thought I'd lost, for a truth I was too afraid to face. But now, I had her back. And as the flames flickered, casting warm light across her face, I realized something simple, something powerful. Love doesn't die.
It just waits, patient, silent, until it finds its way home.